As we could see from the data, size of acreage does not necessarily match size of output or yield. The timing difference that exists between acreage, output, and yield should be an indication that there are factors beyond the control of management and factors that are interfering with the performance of the industry. Otherwise, one would have seen some type of consistent forward movement in acreage, output, and yield. Many of the risk factors are exogenous to the industry and have a significant impact on the poor performance that we witness. Some of these factors are in the hands of nature, such as the excessive rainfalls that Guyana has been experiencing as a result of El Niño phenomenon and the periodic floods which attack this nation. They also include unanticipated strike action by workers and fluctuations in world prices for the product. It also indicates that the risk factors are significant and make it difficult to establish or sustain any favorable production trend in the sugar industry. The sugar industry is the single largest employer in Guyana. It has been for the entire history of the country. The sugar industry in 1986 accounted for over 27,000 employees. According to Gaisuco's website, the company employed as many as 18,000 persons in 2000. Recent newspaper articles indicate that the number of employees has fallen to 16,000. Under normal conditions, being the largest and most important employer in the country would be an enviable feat. But there is nothing to romanticize about labor and the sugar industry. Finding the labor resources and calibrating them with the right level of production, suitable technology, and market opportunities over the existing lifespan of the industry was never easy for colonial planters, and it has proven an equally hard road to hoe for the government of Guyana. Like in colonial times, sugar production in contemporary Ghana was burdened with resistance, conflict, and political mischief. Sugar first depended on slave labor, then indentured labor, and then negotiated contracts through labor unions. Labor's fight for freedom and then realistic wages kept the sugar industry off balance and in a state of flux throughout its history. Labor's destabilizing impact on the sugar industry is reflected in the following quote of Professor Clive Thomas, in which he says, "Rising costs of labor after 1917 forced many plantations into bankruptcy." So even with the reduction in the number of estates, the industry still employed a large number of Guyanese. But that was because it was virtually the only game in town. Employing such large number of persons comes with a cost. The industry is replete with strike action. Of a total of 1,699 strike actions between 1980 and 1986, the sugar industry was responsible for 1,614, or 95% of them. The impact of this behavior on the industry is noteworthy also for the 421,674 man-hours of work lost for the period in reference. Admittedly, the work stoppages might have been for short durations in some instances, but this practice of shutting down the industry simply because you could will do the sugar industry no good now or in the future. As a price taker, Guyana can ill afford to suffer production losses while hoping to reduce its cost of production. The industry will face additional burdens which will push its labor costs up. The gold industry, the construction industry, and even the minibus industry offer the sugar worker or would-be sugar worker alternative employment that is much more lucrative and satisfying than cane cultivation and harvesting. Should the oil and gas industry come on stream as expected, that too will make it difficult for the industry to retain workers. As workers leave the industry, it will add inflationary pressure to the labor budget and force production costs up. Matters could worsen for the industry if the Guyana dollar appreciates in value owing to increased economic activity as a result of expanded gold production and foreign investment additional to oil and gas. There is the view that Gaisuco should not be touched because it employs massive amounts of people. Equally true is the reality that these workers, while producing physical units of cane and sugar, contribute negative value added in monetary terms to the Guyana economy. This cannot continue, especially as pointed out by the chairman of the board, Professor Thomas, that employment costs account for 2/3 of the industry's overall costs.